G'day guys and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to talk about 5 lessons that I learnt from Pokemon's last big boom period, the COVID hype period, and some lessons that you can apply in your collecting journey. Okay, so lesson number 1 that I learnt from the COVID boom is that Pokemon product is not as liquid as you might think it is, or that some people will say it is. When the hype dies down and the dollar chasers move on to a different hobby or a different thing to scalp, Pokemon, even sealed product, is not as easy to sell as you might assume. This is true even for the hyped set. To give you an example of this, I tried to sell 2 of my old Evolving Skies booster boxes and 1 of each of my Kanto Power collections, which has about 10 packs of X and Y evolutions, in mid-2023, which is only 2 years ago. At the time, retail was around $650 a box, and I had them listed on Facebook for $600 each. I think I had the Kanto Power Boxes for around $300 each, which was also under market for the time. Now, you would look at that now and think that would have been an easy sell, right? Well, this sale took about 2 months to move, and eventually I had to lower it to about $550 per Evolving Skies booster box, and around $250 per Kanto Power Box, as this was the only serious offer I had received. This was bought by a local rip and shipper, shout out Flinchy Rips, who wanted them to open on her stream. No one even wanted them to keep sealed for investing purposes, as when the hype dies down, nobody thinks investing in Pokemon is a smart move. Lesson number 2. This is a long-term game. If you want to invest, or as I like to look at it, collect to potentially sell later down the track, keep in mind this is a long-term game. The last thing you want to do is go into any debt for this hobby, or buy so much that you are forfeiting other things in your actual life. Because whilst the hype at the moment is around buying something at retail today and then flipping it tonight for double the price, the real gains in this hobby come in holding the product for 5 years, 10 years, potentially even longer than that. The only way to do that is by buying what you like and what you can easily afford consistently over time. It's about time in the market, not timing the market. Slowly things will gain in value, not all, and we'll get into that in a minute, but in my experience, most will. And by doing this and just buying what you like, the next time the hype cycle hits, you will have the product to benefit and will not have to put yourself in the position to sell early and miss out on the real gains later on. Buy as a fan of the hobby and you will always like how it looks, even if it doesn't gain in value. Lesson number 3. Opinions change. Another reason I like to buy a bit of everything is opinions change over time in this hobby. I've heard a lot of YouTubers talking about how sets like Team Up, Fusion Strike, Lost Origin, etc., how they were all not that highly rated on their release, but have aged well and are now going crazy in prices. However, what I see very few people talk about is sets like Champion's Path, Shining Fates, and Burning Shadows, which at the time were hugely hyped as the next big money set to get into, and either stagnated over time or didn't grow that much at all. Champion's Path was very much like Prismatic when it released. The COVID hype was at its peak, and out comes a set with 2 Chase Charizards. Now, keep in mind at this time, most sets were lucky to even have 1 big hitter, let alone 2, and both of which were Charizard, which was absolutely massive at the time. This set was bought out by bots, you could not find a pre-order, let alone any product in the shelf, and if you wanted some, you had to be paying either 2 times MSRP, or be lucky enough to maybe find some double boxes on the shelves. This sound a little bit familiar? We'll move forward a few years, and Champion's Path has barely increased since then. The set saw big reprints, and the sets that followed introduced things like alt arts, trainer galleries, illustration rares, secret illustration rares, making Champion's Path a set that just doesn't look like it has the depth for a modern set, as do most of the early Sword and Shield sets. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen to sets like Prismatic or 151, Paldean Fates, etc. I think these are extremely strong sets and have a lot more depth than the early Sword and Shield sets. However, there is always the chance that we will get even crazier cards in the future, and all of a sudden these sets no longer hold appeal. The point is, we just don't know what the future holds. Number 4, storage. This might seem obvious, but I thought it was worth touching on as this seems to get overlooked, but storing sealed product takes up a lot of space. Ask me how I know. This gets worse if opening packs. You will end up with a lot of bulk that takes up more space, and whilst your collector app may say that it's worth a certain amount, good luck getting that. Most often, 90% of your cards, commons, uncommons, holos, reverse holos, even EXs, full arts, and some of the gold cards are not easy to sell, especially once the hype wears off, and most of them you will more than likely either give away or sell at bulk rates, which you will get a very small percentage of what the card is worth. And our last lesson, lesson number 5, chasing pulls is an absolute money pit. Yes, you may get lucky, but overall, if you just like 1 or 2 cards from a set, it's often cheaper to just buy the cards outright rather than pulling them. For example, I would have opened, I don't even want to admit how much Champion's Path and probably about 10 booster boxes of Evolving Skies. I ended up getting the Rainbow Charizard from that. I had to end up buying the shiny one. And from Evolving Skies, I got 2 V Alt Arts, not even 1 V Max Alt Art. I ended up having to buy the ones I wanted from that as well. So I would have just been much better opening 1 or 2 booster boxes or 1 or 2 ETBs and just buying the cards I wanted. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you will get lucky. My fiance, for example, got 4 packs of Evolving Skies, Lost Origin, Astral Radiance for her birthday, pulled a Moonbreon, Giratina, and Machamp Alt Art out of those sets, and even pulled 2 Lugia Alt Arts back to back from the only 2 booster boxes she bought. She bought 1 booster bundle of Paldean Fates and pulled the Bubble Mew. Some people just have that sort of luck. But for most people, it's like a Poke machine or a slot machine, where over time, the house will always win. Of course, if you want to collect the entire set, that's a little bit different. However, I would still stick to only buying 1 or 2 booster boxes and then just buy what you're missing. Otherwise, you will still end up with a lot of unwanted bulk and spending much more money than the cards are worth. Personally, I just like to do that, buy 1 of each booster box or ETB, buy another 1 to seal, and I just buy what I want from there. This still gives me the fun of opening and the thrill of occasionally pulling a big hit, like recently I pulled the Rockets Mewtwo out of Destined Rivals, and 1 to keep for my sealed collection. I also like the look of how it all looks out on display as well. Well, I hope that video was helpful, guys. I hope that it can help you avoid some of the mistakes I made in the early COVID hype and use them to not get stuck for a heap of storage or a heap of bulk. If you did find it helpful, make sure you give that like button a little tickle down below. Leave me a comment to let me know what collection you have. And if you want to, please hit subscribe. There'll be plenty more content like this on the channel. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.